Chapter 1262. To restore the glow or flame fan, it required a drop of Yi Qing Luo's heart blood and her heart bone. Using these two things as raw materials, the armament master would recast the glow or flame fan. It would definitely be able to restore the glow or flame fan and make the connection between the glow or flame fan and Yi Qing Luo stronger. I will use profound energy to extract the heart blood and heart bone for you. Dmo Xian looked at the young lady in front of him, his eyes filled with determination as he gently caressed her cheek. Yi Qing Luo nodded, but... Armament master, I don't know any armament master. If it was refining pills, she could still volunteer. But refining armaments? She didn't seem to have heard of anyone among the people she knew who studied weapon forging. Moreover, the glow or flame fan could grow and was second only to the legendary grade weapon. Ordinary armament masters had no way to restore it. At least, the armament master's grade had to reach armament sect and above. Armament masters and alchemists were similar. From low to high, the order was armament slave, armament apprentice, armament master, armament grandmaster, armament sect, armament emperor, armament immortal, armament god. Chapter 1271. The only difference was Free Spring City. Armament the world sect mercenary armament master was even more difficult than alchemist level. The students of the devil class were sent back to the old mansion by 10-horse carriage. Was even more difficult than alchemist level. They were dispersed and escorted back by the emperor palace's disciples. Some armament masters. One by one, there was absolutely no one who could reach armament sect level. Zhao Bo and the other stepped forward to carry the youths off the carriages. Since Dmo Xian said this all of them sucked naturally, he knew some armament sect armament masters. The youths of devil class laid in the horse carriage, Luo's face completely unable to as he closed the distance between them. The faces of the youths were pale. He paused and their brows were tightly knitted together in a somewhat cautious tone. There were no scars on their bodies, but they seemed to be in extreme pain from head to toe, instantly froze as if they were on the verge of death. Lady, Zhao Bo immediately ordered his men to gently lift the youths off the carriage and send them to their room. She frowned slightly as an inexplicable feeling of resistance in the old mansion was extremely heavy. An image of Feng Ling holding on to Dmo Xian's arm. Only the pain and cries of the youths could be heard faintly drifting in the air. Suddenly it flashed and the carriage entered the old house. Xian and Feng Ling getting married. The first to open the curtains was Xiao Jin. Her hands, dressed in a red uniform and had his shoulders suddenly pinched hard as she snorted. He carried the pale-faced Yan Shao Yi in his arms. Isn't it just the armament sect level armament master? We can slowly look for her. When Zhao Bo saw she's not the only armament sect level armament master in this extremely ugly expression. What's going on? Is there a but? He knew that Yi Qing Luo and the others were going to take part in the Academy's interclass competition. She hadn't forgotten that the reason why the competition in the Academy had been witnessed by the various elders and teachers of the Academy was to break the enchantment which the dark forces had conjured. No matter how fierce the battle was, now because of the restoration of the glow or flame fan, right? If there was a second wind chime, she would not be able to control herself in the heavenly Academy. How could they hurt this bunch of youngsters? Dmo Xian's gaze passed over her shoulder and fixed on a certain spot. The doctors were chanting heavily, and their foreheads were dripping ashen as he stared fixedly at the woman, loosening her grip as if he could no longer see anyone or anything. She followed his line of sight and looked behind her. Captain Peach Blossom, sure enough, where are the injured? A woman in a light blue dress also ran all the way drifting in the wind, slowly walked. Her delicate face was covered with a thin layer of sweat. Standing in front of she looked up at Long Yun Zhang down on one knee and paid her respects. Where are the injured? They are badly hurt. This subordinate especially asked Peach Blossom 3,000 to invite the famous doctors near Free Spring City flashed across in the direction of Thank you for your hard work. Greetings. He was about to ask he looked back to find the famous doctor from Free Spring City as they left. Peach had already maybe held her breath as she turned her head for God Pirate's arrival. Long Yun Zhan just as he was about to lift his hair, Long Yun eyes revealing sincerity. Get up first. A hint of vigilance flashed across the woman stood up and walked to the seat, and a trace of amazement flashed in her as she sat down. It was the first time there were more than Long Yun's eyes Yi Qing Luo. He frowned and turned around. The relationship between Sir when he saw the person behind the imperial palace is really good. It was a little surprising. Let's settle the proper business first. Why are you here? It was none other than Tao Tao. Chapter 1272. Read instantly. There were more than 20 doctors dressed in doctor uniforms with medical boxes against the sunlight. His entire body shone the kind of dazzling gold. The youngest doctor was over 50 years old. Even between husband was already standing in front of Long Yun Zhan as he held on to Long Yun Zhan's shoulder. Like the restaurant. Qing Luo that last didn't come back with you. Luo's only thought now. Don't tell me you were beaten up badly in an interclass and disappear in front of these two people's eyes. We won the competition. In front of Dmo interrupted Holy Pirate's wild She sat on Dmo Xian's thighs and even pestered him to be jealous. We can talk about the rest later. To meet the other people in the imperial palace coldly replied. After
Luo
saying
wanted
that,
to cry,
he led
but
the
no
20 or
tears
so
came
doctors
out.
to the youngster's room.
It was all that crazy beast's
The old
fault.
house, which had been
When
silent
he
for a
flirted
long
with her,
time,
he didn't
gradually
even tell
became
her in advance
extremely
that there would be
lively.
other people coming.
The doctor came and
Yi
went.
Qing Luo raised her fist
Zhao
and
Bo
wanted
and
to
the others
punch
listened to the
Dmo
doctor's
Xian.
instructions and ran back
But when he
and forth
remembered
to
that
help.
there was a beautiful woman
Yan
looking at the two of
Xiaoyi's
them with a
room.
smile on her face,
Xiao
he
Jin
couldn't
sat
help
by
it.
the bed and used a
She
towel to wipe
suppressed
the
her
cold
anger
sweat
and
off
retracted
Yan
her
Xiaoyi's
hand.
forehead.
She stood
That
up and
delicate
speedily
little
returned
face
to
was
her
now
seat.
as pale as a sheet of paper.
Lil Luo, her usually fiery red lips were now devoid of any color. Dmo Xian was tickled by her
breathing was
actions
extremely
as he laughed
heavy,
out loud,
and from time to time,
that
he would
peerless
let out
face,
soft moans
because of that
pain.
smile, looked
Her
even more
eyebrows
handsome.
were tightly knitted together,
Yi Qing
as if she
Luo
was
was
enduring the
furious as
intense
she
pain.
stared at him fiercely.
Xiao Jin's
Shameless
hand,
beast,
which
just
was
you
wiping
wait.
her cold sweat.
Now
Couldn't
that your
stop
subordinate
trembling.
is here, I will give you
Seeing
face.
Yan Xiao
Later your
Yi in
subordinate
such
will
pain,
leave.
his heart ached even
I'll
more.
peel your skin off in minutes.
He couldn't wait to take her place
Dmo
and bear the
Xian
pain.
raised his brows as his
Xiao
eyes
Jin was
narrowed.
infinitely
All right,
vexed.
I will wait for you.
Why wasn't he by
The
Yan
two of them
Xiaoyi's
exchanged
side when they were at
flirtatious
the back
glances,
mountain,
which made the beautiful
if he had
lady sitting
accompanied
by the
Yan
side
Xiaoyi,
unable to restrain her laughter.
Yan Xiaoyi wouldn't have
She
suffered
crossed her
such
arms
serious
leisurely
injuries
as she
and
leaned
wouldn't
back
have
on the
needed
chair,
to consume the
looking at
imperial
Dmo
palace's
Xian
pills
in
and wouldn't
ridicule.
have to suffer such pain.
Noticing the lady's gaze,
His slender
Yi
fingers
Qing
curled
Luo
up the
was
towel
really
in his
tempted.
hand one by one.
Damn it, there
At
was
this
probably
moment,
no
the
chance for
strong
her
and
to
determined
establish her
man's
prestige
eyes
in the
reddened.
imperial palace in future.
Xiao Jin put the towel into
The
the
beautiful
basin
lady's
and gently
beautiful
held her little
eyes were
hand.
filled with smiles as she
Her
looked at Yi
delicate
Qing
hand was
Luo's
so
direction
small,
and spoke
yet his large
respectfully.
palm could
I am
completely wrap
Yuan,
around her
the
small
imperial
hand.
palace's armament refining
Xiao
hall
Jin
master
held her hand
and also
tightly,
the overlord's
lifted it
exclusive
gently,
armament
and
master,
pressed it against his cheek.
Saying that,
Her
she
hands
raised
were
her
bone
brows
chilling,
with some
just like
interest,
frost.
but
It
what
was
the
so
imperial
cold that his
palace's
body
mistress
trembled
is
slightly.
worried about will absolutely
His heart
not
was
happen.
aching and filled with guilt.
Although I am the overlord's
Xiao
exclusive
Yi.
armament master, but
Xiao
my
Jin
life
murmured
belongs to
softly,
another man.
calling Yan Xiaoyi's
Yi
name
Qing
affectionately.
Luo heard that and knew that this lady
Even he
was
himself
ridiculing
did
what
not
she said
notice
to
it.
Dmo Xian earlier.
The tenderness in his words
But
could
Yi
almost be
Qing Luo
squeezed
didn't
out of
hear
water.
any bit of disgust or
His
displeasure.
gaze was tender and tender.
Tang
His
Beiyuan's
expression
teasing
gentle.
was kind.
Xiao
Tang
Yi,
Beiyuan
after
was
going
not as
through
well
this,
behaved
I'm
as when in front
increasingly
of certain of
Dmo
your position
Xian.
in my heart. This was enough
When
to
you
prove
wake
that
up,
Tang
when you get
Beiyuan
better,
and
I will
Dmo
definitely
Xian's relationship was
tell you
rather everything in
harmonious.
my heart. Tang Beiyuan had just said that her life belonged to another
Jin's
man.
murmurs.
This sentence,
Xiao Jin,
you're married,
who had been confessing tenderly,
such a young and
paused.
outstanding woman.
How
Their
could she have
previous
gotten
high
married
morale
so
instantly
early?
vanished without a trace.
Tang
Beiyuan shook her head
The
with a bitter
eyelashes of the
smile.
woman lying on the bed trembled
We're
as
not
she
married
twisted
yet,
her body
but
in pain.
I don't think I'll have to wait too long.
His breathing
she
became
didn't even have
heavier
the
and
confidence
heavier,
to say
as
the
if he
last
was
word,
suffering from
maybe.
indescribable pain.
Yi Qing Luo
Xiao
opened her
Jin
mouth
held her
but
hand
didn't know what
tightly
to
and
say.
pressed it against his face.
It was obvious that Tang
covered her
Beiyuan
eyes
was
with his other
genuinely in
hand.
love with her fiancé.
Xiao Yi,
As
I'm
for the
here.
reason why they didn't get
I'm
married,
here,
in
Yi
his
Qing
palm,
Luo didn't
he could
ask
clearly
too much.
feel the movement of his eyelashes.
After all,
this was only the
Xiao
first
Jin's
time
heart
they had
trembled,
met, and he immediately
One
withdrew
thing was
his
certain.
hand. Just as Tang Beiyuan
Sure
had
enough,
said,
he saw
what
a
she
pair
was
of
worried
beautiful
about would
eyes
never
that were
happen.
covered with a layer of
I'm
haziness.
sorry. She
Yi
blinked her
Qing
eyes
Luo
in a
opened
daze,
her mouth
her
gently,
face scrunched up in
apologizing
pain,
for her action of assuming that
until
Tang
Yan
Beiyuan was the
Xiaoyi's
second
eyes completely
Feng Ling
opened
before
and
they
a
had
pair
even
of
met.
hazily beautiful eyes looked towards him. Chapter
Xiao
12.
Jin's
64.
entire body stiffened.
Subdue. He was still
Tang
holding Yan
Beiyuan's
Xiaoyi's
choice of
hand
word
and
seemed a
placing
little.
it against his
This is
cheek.
the first time I've seen such an overlord.
Tang Beiyuan propped her chin as her
Chapter
beautiful eyes
1273.
stared at Dmo Xian's face.
Yan Xiaoyi's
the current
gaze was
overlord
finally
fixated on
looks like a
Xiao
human.
Jin. Yi
She
Qing
didn't
Luo
speak.
glanced sideways at
He became
Dmo
increasingly
Xian.
nervous.
Looks like a human.
After a while,
What
Xiao
kind of
Jin stood up
evaluation
in a
was that?
panic.
I just
Could it
just
be
felt that your hand was
Dmo
very
Xian
cold.
didn't look like a
So-
human in the
so,
past?
he stuttered as he
Yi
explained,
Qing Luo
his
recalled
face
her
full of
past
nervousness,
self.
living like a machine.
He had just
a machine
vowed
that
that as long as
exhausted
Yan
all its
Xiaoyi
energy for the
woke up,
secluded Yi
he would
family.
tell her about his feelings.
She didn't look like a human
At
at
this
that
moment,
time. Those words had long
Could
been
it be that
forgotten because
Dmo
of his
Xian was the
nervousness
same
when
as her in
facing
the
Yan
past?
Xiaoyi.
Yi
His
Qing
stuttering
Luo felt like
explanation
laughing
was
as
stopped
she
when
imagined
Yan
the past
Xiaoyi
Dmo
slowly
Xian.
sat up.
Xiao
Xiao Jin pressed Yan Xiaoyi
Dmo
down
Xian
in a panic.
berated Tang
You can't move
Beiyuan's
around
name,
recklessly
but his tone
now.
didn't have any signs of majesty.
Before the doctor comes, lie
He
down
looked at
and
Yi
rest.
Qing Luo,
who was still laughing.
As soon as he as one hand slid under the table towards body actually fell towards him softly. His slender fingers silently covered Yi-Ching Luo's legs. She stretched out her hands and wrapped them around his firm waist. Yi-Ching Luo's petite body stiffened as a short cry came out from her mouth. Xiao Jing could clearly feel Yan Xiaoyi's icy cold face through the thin layer of clothing. Yi-Ching Luo's petite body trembled slightly as she shook her head with a blushing slightly as she softly called out his hand. His hand actually, because of this using the table as a cover, on his body, his fingers gently and slowly brushed past her legs.
Yan Xiaoyi's eyes reddened. It brushed
little
past
hands
her
wrapped
thighs.
even tighter as her voice
For the
revealed the
convenience
trace of the
grievance,
competition.
Xiao
Yiqing
Jin
Luo had designed the uniform to be extremely
Xiao
tight.
Jin was stunned.
The trousers below
She
the skirt
wasn't
were almost
angry at him
stuck
for
to holding
skin.
her hand without permission.
DMO Xian's
And she
hand
even
swept
took the
past her
initiative
tight
to wrap her
trousers,
arms
which
around
was
his
equivalent
waist,
to
touching the skin
Xiao
on her
Jin's
legs.
heart beat wildly.
That
His
layer
entire
of
body
trousers made her feel
inexplicably
even
hot.
more itchy. He looked at the young
Mistress,
girl who was
why
hugging
is your
him,
face so
his body
red?
stiff, his arms
Tang
trembling
Beiyuan
as he
saw that
reached
Yiqing
towards her.
Luo didn't seem to be fine
He wanted
and
to wrap
immediately
his arms
looked at
around
Yan
Yan
Xiaoyi,
Xiaoyi,
overlord.
but
His
he was
mistress
afraid of
feeling
being
unwell?
rejected by Yan Xiaoyi.
DMO Xian lifted
Don't
the
tell
teacup
me
elegantly
you hate
and
me
drank
that
a
much.
mouthful of tea.
She
Yan
is
Xiaoyi
thin-skinned and is
suddenly
regretting
raised
after
her
you
head,
saw her
her
fierce
misty
look
eyes
earlier.
looking at him.
Tang
Her
Beiyuan
beautiful
nodded her
eyes
head
were
as she
slightly
retracted
red,
her worried
revealing
gaze.
a thin
Mistress,
layer of
don't
mist.
worry. I won't tell
Xiao
anyone
Jin's
else in
heart
the Imperial
stopped.
Palace
He
about
subconsciously
today's
reached
matter.
out to hold her face,
Yiqing
gently
Luo
caressing
gave a
her
few
eyes.
dry laughs
How
as
could
her
I
body
hate you?
tensed up.
Xiao Yi.
How could I
She
hate
gave a
you?
dry laugh
I
as
can't
she
wait to
turned her
like
head
you.
and gave
How could I
DMO
hate you?
Xian a warning stare.
Don't cry. If
Where
you
did
cry,
this beast
my
learn to
heart
flirt
will
with
ache.
girls?
Xiao
Unexpectedly,
Jin silently added
he actually
another
did
sentence
such
in
a
his
thing
heart.
to her under the table.
His slender fingers
The more
gently
she
caressed
stared,
Yan
the more
Xiaoyi's
she
eyes.
stared.
The
Yan
hand on her
Xiaoyi's
thigh
little
became
hands
more
tightened
and
around
more
his
wanton.
waist, seemingly enjoying
Furthermore,
Xiao Jin's
it faintly
touch.
brushed past the inside
She
of her
slowly
great moon
closed her
retreat,
eyes,
causing
and
her
the
to
pain
tremble
between
even
her
more
brows
violently.
eased a little.
What made
He
Yiqing
waited for a
Luo
long
unable
time,
to balance
but he
was
didn't feel the
emperor
sensation he
avian
was
calmly
expecting.
sipped its tea. Yan Xiaoyi
Yiqing
opened her
Luo's little
eyes in
face was
confusion.
burning as she saw DMO
She saw
Xian
Xiao
ignoring
Jin
her
staring
gaze.
at her, not knowing what he
She
was
clenched her
thinking.
teeth and simply picked
Yan
up the teacup
Xiaoyi
as her
blinked
other
her eyes
hand
in a
slid
daze.
under the table
Her
without
soft
anyone
body
noticing
lying on
and
top
held
of
on to
his.
DMO Xian's large
The woman's
palm.
soft and delicate body,
Just
as she
especially
touched
the
DMO
softness in
Xian's
front of her
hand,
chest,
DMO
was pressed
Xian had
tightly
already
against his
planned this
chest.
beforehand as he held her wrist
Xiao
in
Jin
reverse.
was hot-blooded, and the one in his
Yiqing
arms
Luo
was the
struggled
woman
and
he
his grip
loved.
tightened. His body
Just as
tensed up
Yiqing
and he
Luo
reached out
flew
to
into a
pry
rage
Yan
out of
Xiaoyi's hand
humiliation,
away, putting down the teacup and was about to add her other hand into the
it
battlefield.
hurts.
Yan
DMO
Xiaoyi
Xian
refused to
brought
let the topic back to business.
She didn't know
Beiyuan,
why, but
the
every
glower
time her
flame
body
fan is
moved,
here, she
take
would
a
feel
look
a dull
and see how
pain.
confident you are.
It was as if his internal
Saying
organs
that,
had been
he
torn
pushed
apart.
the glower flame fan which was
Why?
broken into
Could he
two
still
pieces
feel such
towards
clear
Tang
pain in
Beiyuan.
his dream?
Yiqing
However,
Luo's
she
resistance
still endured
stopped.
the pain and only wanted
At
to
this
hug
moment,
Xiao Jin
she had
tightly.
no mood to continue messing
This dream
around with
belonged to her
DMO
alone.
Xian. Only in her dreams did this man
Chapter
belong to her alone.
1265. Only in her
Tang
dreams
Beiyuan
could she
fiddled
do
with the
whatever
broken
she wanted to
glowing
do to
fan.
him without any qualms.
She glanced at the gap and
She
rolled
wasn't
her
willing
eyes.
to wake up, nor was she
Dizun,
willing to let
are
go
you
of him in
questioning
her
my
dreams.
skills? This was her
DMO
dream.
Xian glanced at the young lady
So,
beside him.
she could do anything.
Tang Beiyuan nodded
As
her
long
head
as she
as her
could keep
fingers
him.
caressed the glower flame fan and smiled at Yiqing Luo. Mistress, I have
Chapter
100% confidence.
100%,
Yan Xiaoyi
which
cry
meant
out in
100%
pain.
of the glower
Xiao
flame
Jin
fan
immediately
could be
panicked.
restored. How would he
Yiqing
dare to
Luo's
struggle
eyes
again?
lit up as she looked at DMO
Looking at Yan
Xian in
Xiaoyi
delight.
with a
The
worried
glower
gaze,
flame fan
Xiao
can be
Jin
restored.
asked helplessly, "Where does it
can
hurt?"
be restored.
Where does it hurt?
Luckily, the glower
Bear with
flame
it.
fan
The
was a
doctor will
growing
be here
attribute.
soon.
I'll rush the
There
doctor
was still
over to
room
take
for
a look at you.
redemption.
Don't cry.
His heart, which
Just
had been
as he
hanging
was
in
about
the
to
air,
turn and leave,
slowly sank
the
into
two
the bottom
hands around his
heart.
waist, wrapped around
Her
him
little
tightly,
hand clenched the
unwilling
big
to
palm
let
on
go.
her thigh.
I'm ready to
Xiao
extract
Yi,
the heart
you,
bone and
Xiao
blood
Jin
anytime.
didn't dare to move too much.
DMO
worried
Xian's
that it would
fingers
affect
caressed
Yan
her palm
Xiaoyi's
as he said
wound.
warmly, "You must be
Before he
tired
could
from today's
speak,
competition
Yan
and
Xiaoyi
exhausted
held
too
his
much
hand.
energy." She pulled his
Forcefully
large
extracting
palm
the
and placed it
heart
on
bone
her
and
blood
chest.
will affect
It
your
hurts
body.
here. It hurts.
Extract the heart bone and
Xiao
blood.
Jin,
Preferably
what do I
in the
do?
wee hours of
I'm
the
about
morning.
to die
The
from the
second
pain.
bell. Xiao Jin's mind
Tang
went
Beiyuan
blank.
continued.
It was as
Wee
if a ball
hours?
of white light exploded in his
Yiqing
mind.
Luo looked at DMO Xian.
What did his hand touch?
Can we do it tonight?
It was as soft
Before
as
that,
cotton.
if your
It was
body
so
can meet the
soft that he
requirements of
subconsciously
extracting
wanted
the
to
heart
move his
bone and
fingers.
blood,
yes. And, once he
DMO
moved,
Xian
he heard a
didn't
soft
object.
moan. It was alluring.
Knowing that the glower flame
his
fan
consciousness
could be restored,
suddenly
and
came
with
back to his
100%
senses.
confidence.
His eyes
Yiqing
fixed
Luo
on Yan
didn't insist
Xiaoyi's
any
body.
further. His
Today's
hand
competition
was still
was
on
too
Yan
dangerous
Xiaoyi's
and she was
chest.
indeed tired. His fingers were
After
bent.
the meal,
It was
Tang
obvious that he really stayed in the restaurant. As for Dmo Xian and Yiqing Luo, they returned to the dormitory, instantly flushed red. Yiqing Luo needed he wanted to retract his hand, but Yan Xiao seemed to know what he wanted to do. There were 2 days of free time in advance. It was said that because of the interclass competition, the feeling in his students had been tense for a long time and used profound energy on a large scale. Xiao Jin's body was so extremely it gave the students time to relax. Emotions in his eyes, constantly attacking his lower abdomen. It was to let the students report their results back to their elders. No, it can't be like this. Stay at the West Square and get to know the forces from all over the world. How could he have such thoughts towards Xiao Yi? He would be able to decide which faction he would belong to after he graduated from the academy in the next 2 days. His arms slightly exerted force. The two of them had just arrived at the entrance of the mansion when they saw a group of students dressed in class uniforms surrounding the entrance tightly. Under the pole, those students were mostly youngsters. His body was already weak, but when he looked inside, he saw many girls who were talking at once and laughing joyfully. Xiao Jin caught Xiao Yi in time. As far as the eye could see, the two of them fell to the ground. There were at least 50 to 60 people. Xiao Jin acted as a cushion, this kind of so excitement. Xiao Yi didn't fall. Luo had always had no interest. The position of the two, especially was a little now that her mind was preoccupied with repairing the glowing flame, also realized this and shifted his gaze away by the entrance. Yiqing Luo obviously heard those ladies mentioning her name. Yan Xiao Yi leaned against his chest. There were also supreme. Her slightly red face was no longer as cold as before. Yiqing Luo's footsteps halted as her slender brows creased slightly. Her little hands subconsciously were grabbing onto his shirt. Just as she was about to walk over, her body was forcefully pulled towards the mansion by DMO Xian. Don't bother about unimportant people. Nothing was better than being intimate with the woman he loved, for you to return to your room and didn't dare to do anything. Yiqing Luo staggered a few steps raised her eyes she looked at deeply at Xiao in puzzlement. Her hands changed. She found that his expression was gently caressing it, as if he was trying to hold back some emotions. His fingers were like elves, moving through a layer of clothing. His eagerness to pull her away did not seem to be just to let her rest on her lips. Instead, you forcefully pressed me against the table the last when they were gathered together. Yiqing Luo turned her head and swept a glance in the direction of the 50 to 60 students. Although she had doubts in her heart, and his breathing didn't ask too much. What? You don't have the guts now? A melodious laughter was heard from behind. Brother bent down and pressed her fingers on Xiao Jin's lips. Only you are allowed to forcefully push me, but I'm not allowed to forcefully push you. A jade-green figure forcefully knocked just as her voice fell away. Her lips had already forcefully pressed on his. Didn't pay attention and was knocked forcefully back a few biting steps. And caressing. She looked up and imitated saw how he had kissed her the last time and returned the kiss to Xiao Jin without changing anything. Xiaoling has waited for a long time. You're finally back. Xiao Jin's voice was already hoarse. Yiqing Luo steadied herself. There was a voice in his head that kept shouting for him to press down this unbridled woman on top of him. How did Feng Ling know that DMO Xian was somewhere in his body? It kept clamoring for action. Here. But he maintained his rationality. DMO Xian's expression sank as his cold eyes swept past the woman because the injuries on her body had worsened. The disgust in her eyes was obvious. He couldn't take advantage of her red lips. But it wasn't that she didn't see the disgust in DMO Xian's eyes. But she still wasn't willing to let go of him. Chapter 12. No matter how much DMO Xian hated her, Xiao Yi's slender and fair little hands couldn't reject her completely. They bounced as long as her grandma was around. She could do whatever she wanted without any slid scruples. Into his clothes. Feng Ling restrained the surging emotions into contact and hugged DMO Xian's arm tighter. Xiao Jin's tense nerves broke down DMO Xian's arm right into that proud ravine on which were filled with yearning, were bloodshot. Brother Supreme Mo, don't chase Xiaoling of lust. Xiaoling will be obedient and won't disturb you. His hoarse voice revealed an irrepressible and begged for mercy. Xiao Jin reached out and hugged the girl who was lying on him. It brushed past her proud place. You asked for it. DMO Xian's expression was overcast and the fingers on his arm were clenched into a fist. How could he control himself under the seduction of the girl he loved? Let go. If he could control himself, Feng Ling was so then he wasn't by the coldness in his eyes that her whole body trembled, and her heartbeat didn't make Yan Xiao Yi afraid at all. But she still didn't let go of DMO Xian's arm. She giggled out loud. She licked her red lips, which were dry from nervousness, her frowning brows buried her entire body into DMO Xian's embrace. If you dare to stop, then you aren't a man. Just as Feng Ling was about to bury herself, he grabbed his clothes tightly and pulled hard. Her arms suddenly felt pulling Xiao Jin down. She kissed immediately his lips fiercely. His body felt light as he was fiercely flung away by a strong feel force. Xiao Jin's taste. Xiao Jin's temperature. Feng Ling fell heavily on the ground and let out a scream. In this dream, pain. Xiao Jin belonged to her alone. The intense pain spread from her buttocks. Yan Xiao Yi's kiss became more and more lingering. Her whole body felt like her bones were broken and the pain was indescribable. Xiao Jin turned from guest to host. The pain on her body couldn't compare to the pain in her heart. The intense kiss raised the temperature of the whole room. Eyes were red and her delicate face was pale. The two of them were already entangled. He actually pushed her away. At this moment, brat, furthermore, he had pushed her away in such a rough manner. I brought the ghost doctor over. Did Brother D hate her that much? Let's take a look at Xiao. Was he so disgusted that he felt annoyed just by looking at her? The door was pushed open rudely. Little Ling, are you alright? God Thief tugged on the ghost doctor's sleeve and swaggered in. She's your fiancée after all. Peach, Long Yun how could you treat her like this? And Zhao Bo followed behind. Esteemed teacher Mo, immediately, you are our teacher. There was a moment of silence. You should set a good example. The few of them looked at everything that was happening in the room in shock. Are you teaching us how to treat our fiancés in the future? Both
the students who were
froze.
originally surrounding Feng Ling
Xiao
immediately
Jin
went forward and helped
lust.
Feng Ling up while defending her.
Now that he was shocked
there
and
were a
being
few
watched,
students who
he
stared
was so
furiously
scared
at
that
the
he went
expressionless
soft,
Yiqing Luo, who was standing by the side. He wanted to cry but had no tears.
Damn,
The students
would he
looked
have a
at her
shadow
as
in
if
his
they were
heart in
looking
the
at a
future?
vixen. Would he be able to get better in the future? Even
Damn.
using her toes, Yiqing Luo could imagine
right?
what Feng Ling and these students were discussing about earlier. Holy pirate. It was none other than
first to react.
She, Feng Ling,
blushed.
was Supreme Mo's fiancé.
He
immediately dragged the ghost doctor
As for
away.
Supreme Mo,
Because
when
of
Long
her,
Yunjian,
of a proud
Xiao
student,
Bo,
he
and the
treated
others
Feng
came to
Ling,
their senses.
his fiancé,
They reached out
coldly.
to
cover Peach's eyes and forcibly took her
Feng
away.
Ling
came here to call back
The
her
door slammed
fiancé's
shut
love
again
for
with a
herself
bang.
and so on.
Outside the
Even
door,
if it wasn't
the
what
ghost
Yiqing
doctor's
Luo
voice
had
could be
imagined,
heard,
but the
if you don't
content
want
was
Miss
almost
Yan's
the same.
injuries
to worsen, you'd better stop
Yiqing
now.
Luo
only had 2 words
Otherwise,
to express her
even
current
I,
feelings.
the
ghost doctor, will be powerless. Chapter
You're
12.
such an
unromantic old man.
Fiancé.
The young couple is so loving
DMO
inside,
Xian squinted
and you
his
have to
peach
say
blossom
such
eyes
things
as
that
he repeated
the
mood.
3 words softly. Holy pirate spat a few times who stood up with the help of the ghost doctor, looked at him anxiously. When Xiao
She
Jin,
bit her red
who
lips
was in
lightly,
the room, looking
heard
as
the
though
ghost
she wanted to
doctor's
say
words.
something but
All
stopped.
his
feelings completely vanished
DMO
into thin
Xian
air. Sneered as his thin lips twitched as he looked at Feng
He
Ling
stiffened
and
his
repeated
body
the
and
words
quickly
again.
got up.
Fiancé. He
Hmm?
discovered that the girl beneath
MO,
him had
Brother
unknowingly
Supreme
fallen
MO.
unconscious again. Feng Ling sobbed
Her little
softly
face
as
turned
her pair
even
of
paler.
beautiful eyes and eyelashes
His brows
were
were
already
tightly
wet with
knitted,
tears, as if he was in unbearable
That
pain.
pitiful
and weak look made
His
one
lips
feel
that
were
pity for
swollen
her.
and moist from kissing.
Don't be
open
afraid,
slightly,
little
and
Ling.
he kept groaning in pain. Even if he's the elder of the
Xiao
headquarters,
Yi.
if he's so fickle
Xiao
and doesn't
Yi.
acknowledge his fiancée,
Xiao Jin's
then we'll
heart
report
suddenly
this matter
felt
to
a
the
sharp
headquarters, and it twitched fiercely. The one who stood out to speak was a female student from High Profound Class 2. High Profound
Chapter
Class 2 had now
1276.
become a joke. While the ghost
Under
doctor
Lu
was
Shuelan's
taking the intentional
intentional
embellishment, Long Yunjian
all the
succinctly
students were
recounted what had
certain that
happened
this
in
time
West
they had
Lawn
lost
Square.
all
their face and were going to
After
be
hearing
demoted
that
was
all
all
the
because of the
students
devil
Yiqing Luo's
class had been
sinister and
surrounded
cunning.
by the dark forces. The
which
female
was why
student
they were
pulled
so
Feng Ling
heavily
behind
injured.
her and pointed towards
The
Yiqing
ghost
Luo's
doctor and
direction.
God Pirate's
Master
eyes
Supreme
met,
MO,
and a haze
touch your
flashed
own
across
conscience
their
and
eyes.
say, do you treat her as
He
your
was
student
already
or as a
heavily
woman?
injured
to begin with
With
and
someone
he even
taking the lead
consumed
to
the
speak,
spirit returning
the other
pill
female
specially
students'
made by the
emotions were
Imperial
also
Palace.
infected.
If it was
That's
an
right,
ordinary profound
Master
practitioner,
Supreme MO.
once
You
the
already
effects
have
of
a
the spirit
fiancé,
returning
so you
pill
shouldn't
were
be
used so
stuck.
ambiguous
He would
with
either
female
die or
students.
be crippled.
What's more,
Ghost Doctor's
student
white brows
Yiqing Luo
creased,
and the
as he
Overlord already
impatiently
have
flung
that
Yan
kind of
Xiao
improper
Yi's wrist
relationship.
away.
Luckily you've been nourished
Student
by
Yiqing
last
Luo,
Luo's
don't you feel
medicinal
guilty
pill,
for
and
ruining
your
their
body's quality
fiancé
has far
relationship?
surpassed ordinary people.
The female
so you're able to
students were
withstand
filled
the
with
backlash
righteous
from the spirit
indignation.
returning pill. There were some female
more he
students who
spoke,
could empathize
the more
with her and
impatient
felt
his
that a
expressions
woman's fate
became.
was really miserable as
You're
they
just a
directly
bunch of
walked up to
kids who
Yiqing
haven't even
Luo,
grown hair
pointing
yet.
at her and scolding Vixen.
Why do you have to provoke this kind
For
of
a
thing?
moment, the entire entrance of the
Troublesome.
dormitory was bustling
If it
with
wasn't for
noise.
the
fact that these youngsters had a
DMO
close
Xian's
relationship with
frosty
Yiqing
eyes
Luo,
were
as sharp as a blade. The ghost doctor
He
really
lifted
wasn't
his
willing
feet
to
and
waste
was
her
about to
time
walk
refining
towards
medicine
Yiqing
to treat
Luo
these
when he was
troublesome
stopped by a
brats.
gaze from Yiqing Luo.
So it's the soul restoring
His
pill.
footsteps
paused slightly,
No
and
wonder
when
I
his gaze
can't
met
see any
Yiqing
injuries
Luo,
on these
it
kids.
eased up
But
slightly.
they're all
howling like pigs being
Yiqing
slaughtered.
Luo
looked at the 2 female
Holy
students
Pirate
and
suddenly
raised her brows
understood
with a
and looked at
smile which
Ghost
didn't look
Doctor.
like a smile. Are
This
you
group
done?
of kids are like newborn
The profound
calves
energy
that are not
which was
afraid of
released
tigers.
invisibly made the 2 female
They
students
even
feel
dared to
pressured.
take
elixirs like the return
They
god
trembled
pill.
and took a few steps back.
Most
not
profound
daring to speak
practitioners did
again.
not dare to experience
Since
the
you're done,
consequences of
then,
consuming the
listen to
soul
me.
returning pill. Yiqing Luo
In the case
took a
of step
severe
forward
injuries.
slowly.
After consuming the
The
soul
2
returning
female
pellet,
students
the
retreated
wounds
in
on the
fear.
profound practitioner's body
One of
would
them
heal
felt
on
her
their
legs
own.
wobbling, and when Yiqing
After the
Luo
effects
got
of the
closer,
medicine dissipated,
she collapsed onto
the
the
wounds
ground
on the
as she
body
grabbed
would not
onto
reappear.
another
female student's trousers
However,
tightly. The wounds still had an
the
effect
female
on the
student
body. Raised her leg in fear.
Not
and
only
kicked
did
the
profound
student who had fallen
practitioners
to the
have to
ground
endure
away. Pain that was 100 times
She
more
hurriedly
painful
rushed
than when they were
towards the
heavily
crowd.
injured. They also had to.
He
Yiqing
couldn't
Luo
find the
stood
exact
firmly
location
next
of
to
the
that
wound on
female
his body
student
as
or
she
what
bent
kind of
down
injury
and
it
looked down
was.
at her.
Last night,
But there
at
was
the
no way
entrance
to
of the
save
gentle
him.
village, I saw you
Ghost,
dressed up
Ghost
gorgeously
Doctor.
with a man. Xiao Jin
Her
stood
voice
stiffly by
paused,
the bedside,
her thin
his
eyebrows
gaze
slightly
deeply
raised,
fixed on Yan
and the
Xiao
corners of her
Yi,
mouth
whose face
carried a
was filled
teasing with pain.
smile. Is there no other way?
The female student's
the moment
face
he opened his
instantly
mouth,
turned pale.
The ghost doctor glared at him
Ignoring
maliciously.
her fear,
You brat,
she shouted
you still
angrily.
dare to speak.
You're slandering me.
You clearly knew
I-
that this girl's injuries
I was
were
with my
severe,
classmates
yet
at
you
the
still
mansion
did that
last
kind
night.
of thing to her. How could I go
If
to
we
a
hadn't
place like
come
the
early,
Village of
this
Tenderness?
girl's life would have been in your hands.
The land of tenderness was the green wooden
troublesome.
pavilion of the West Billow Square.
All he did was create trouble
An
for him.
unmarried woman in a land of
Xiao
gentleness.
Jin was unable
if this
to
matter were
refute
to be
and lowered
spread
his
out,
eyes in
her
guilt.
reputation would be completely
All
ruined.
right.
The
Call that
female
bunch of
student's
quacks
exclamation
over,
didn't
and
gain the
first tell
trust
them
of
how
the
to find the
surrounding
location
people.
of the wound.
The students were all pointing fingers at her. The ghost doctor couldn't be bothered to say anything else.
She just wanted to resolve this troublesome matter as soon as possible. Yi-Ching Luo's eyelids drooped as she looked at that hand, which was clutching that when Yi-Ching Luo returned. She didn't definitely make her repay, but only raised her eyes as she met that female student's gaze with a smile which didn't look like a smile. To half a month to help them find medicinal pills. Spoiling their fiancé relationship. Quack doctor. What rights do you have to spout a mouthful of saliva? Ruin my reputation? Those doctors were the most prestigious doctors in came to an abrupt Three Springs City, and within a radius of hundreds of surroundings also stopped abruptly. In the mouth of the ghost doctor, Yi-Ching Luo raised her hand as her slender fingers held onto the hand which was on her lapel. Swept past Xiao Bo. One finger shuddered and reacted. I'll call them over now. Anyone can say such slanderous words, and anyone can say it. Night approached the hour of You just treat it as something which you say casually, but have you ever thought about the serious consequences it will cause to others? Even in her dreams, her brows were still tightly very soft, but it carried an irresistible charm. Calm down. The invisible pressure which was released made everyone's gazes unknowingly knitted around her. Easily listening to someone's around the sleeping girl. I don't know if I should laugh at your naivety or at your stupidity. Under the dim candlelight, the fluorescent glow was the female student's hand as she looked at her condescendingly. Stop How long have you known Feng Ling for? The young lady pouted her pink lips as she raised her hand to push away the arm which was restraining her waist. The female student's expression changed. In the next instant, a pair of warm lips had already sealed her lips. The female student who was originally blocking in front of the scent of male also slowly shifted her body as she turned her head towards Feng Ling, her eyes filled with suspicion. Chapter 1277. Right. How long had they known Feng twice as both her hands pushed against based on a few words from Feng Ling. They had already struggled in master Xian even more overbearing. Those few students who had voiced out earlier felt a chill down their spines as they broke out in cold sweat. She opened her eyes in a daze as she gazed into that pair of tender increasingly unfriendly blossom eyes. Her hands automatically wrapped around his neck as she pressed her lips tightly against his as she did it on purpose. Just as she relaxed her body and closed her eyes to enjoy the intimacy, she had not expected Yi-Ching Luo to be so quick. The man who was leaning on her had already moved his body away. She had made those students who were on her side, the man's scorching temperature, filled with righteous indignation to stand up for her. His large palm moved her wrists away from his neck. Yi-Ching Luo suddenly pointed towards that female student from high the kind of person who would give up on conquering her. The female student's body stiffened as she didn't even dare to breathe loudly. It was obviously the kind of person who could turn the tables. You said that I have an improper relationship with the overlord. At this critical juncture, the Emperor Bird actually took the initiative. The smile on her lips was elegant, like a dream or fantasy. This could be a fake DM. However, that pair of charming eyes, which were suffused with rippling light, the deep male voice made her caused one's entire body to shiver. Yi-Ching Luo lazily turned over and laid on the pillow. The overlord and I are in a serious relationship. She was extremely dissatisfied with Don't use the word improper on us. Beiyuan is waiting for you. Aren't you going to get cold air? Was she openly admitting that she had a close relationship with His Majesty, once again, the overlord? Do you want me to continue? Didn't they say that? The man's warm breath sprayed on the skin on the back of her neck. Could it be that they had advanced from master and disciple slowly covered that kind of relationship? Yi-Ching Luo's petite body didn't give them any time to digest. Slightly red. Instead, just as she was about to avoid Diamo Xian's touch, his steps were light and slow on her waist, but he carried a strong and intimidating discernible teasing made Yi-Ching Luo's face so flushed red like a raging fire, burning hot. She instinctively wanted to seek help from the people around her. She simply turned over and grabbed Diamo Xian's deliberately teasing hand as she gritted beside her just a moment ago didn't seem to see who had the abilities. The man who was looking at her from a close distance suddenly was extremely joyous. That originally playful smile on his face instantly can also be easily persuaded by others. Yi-Ching Luo raised her brows in provocation as she flung Diamo Xian's hand to one side. The human heart was like this. Just as she was about to proudly get up, to the wind, her shoulders sank and she fell onto the bed once again. But she didn't know how to personally verify whether it was the wind or the rain. Yi-Ching Luo's eyes widened in astonishment, and before she could even say a word, she looked as though she had suffered a huge blow and was extremely frail. This kiss was different became even more enchanting and radiant. Instead, as her vision slowly turned towards the man who was looking at her silently with a doting gaze. It was as if he was really moved by Gu Yu and his feelings were aroused. Chapter 1269. Yi-Ching Luo was so shocked that she pushed Diamo Xian's Ling's petite body shuddered. She was still on her immediately glued to Diamo Xian's body. Diamo Xian, a pair of reddened eyes and her wet eyelashes fluttered during her menstrual period. Right? Just a moment later, however, the bean-sized tears rolled down from the struggles were merely tickling. Her pitiful look was obviously begging Diamo Xian not to expose her in front of everyone. Her breasts. Feng Ling was very clear. Yi-Ching Luo struggled even more conscious guidance. These students had developed an extreme distrust
Without
towards her.
saying a word,
DMO Xian's fingers swept over the inside of her twin
fiancé.
crescent breasts and pressed down
That
hard.
also meant that the story she had fabricated earlier was
Yi
indeed
Luo's
false,
body shuddered violently,
which
as
meant
her
that she
breathing
was
stopped
indeed like what Yi
momentarily. Luo said,
Her
making
blushing
use of
face
everyone's
was now
sympathy,
flushed red,
using
as
everyone
if it
as
was
a
on
tool.
fire.
How indignant those students were to
he's a
stand up
heartless
for her
beast.
just now.
He
After
actually
knowing
used
his
his
hands to press down
how
on
indignant
her,
they would be,
accusing her of using
Don't
and
try to
lying.
provoke
a man's self-control.
These students.
DMO
They would
Xian's
peel
low
off her
and hoarse
skin.
voice revealed his deep
Just
feelings.
imagining the
There's still
consequences
5
in her
more
mind.
days.
Feng
I will
Ling's
continue.
body couldn't stop
Continue
trembling.
until
You cry and beg
DMO
for mercy.
Xian didn't speak for a long time.
His lips,
brushed past her
mood
earlobe, was getting more and more
It made
uneasy.
Yi
Luo's petite body
Finally,
shudder
Feng
continuously.
Ling
couldn't hold it in any longer and directly
Luo's
rushed
mind
towards
went blank.
DMO Xian's direction.
Even when the man flipped over
Brother
and
Mo
got down from her
Supreme
body,
quickly
she
answered
still
them.
hadn't noticed it.
Didn't you promise
Looking at the
Grandma that you will
completely
do your
dazed
best
young
to
lady,
protect little Ling? DMO Xian smiled
Feng Ling
helplessly,
stretched out her hand,
trying to hug DMO Xian's arm.
In his words, he deliberately
Chapter 12,
emphasized the word
grandma. This last
But
usually
the
only
progress
dared
in
to
Feng
show
Ling's
off with her
thoughts
mouth.
were
completely in the opposite
But if he
direction.
really
touched her, she
her
would be more
hand
shy
had
than
yet to
anyone
touch
else. DMO Xian. His
thin lips curled into
DMO
a smile,
Xian dodged
becoming
sideways.
increasingly gentle and pampering.
Feng Ling's hand froze
bent
in
over
midair
and stretched
looked
out
at him
his hand to
incredulously.
embrace
the young lady who was
That
still in a
face
daze,
which
made her crazy.
His
Had
other
no
hand
emotions
went
at
around
all.
to the wooden frame and pulled
That
Yi
pair of eyes
Luo's
which made her
uniform down.
intoxicated was so
His hands
cold
moved
as if it was
gently and
quenched
helped
with
her
ice.
put on her clothes.
He stood there,
His
without
movements
any
were neat and
adornment in his
skillful,
master's
and it
robe,
took only a moment
swaying
for
in
him
the
to
wind,
tie Yi
like a
Luo's
banished
clothes.
immortal.
His
During
rosy
the period
thin
of Yi
lips,
Luo's
bit by
training,
bit, curled into an
DMO
arc
Xian
which made
not
her
only
sink
helped
in.
her wash her clothes secretly.
Feng Ling was so frightened
He
that
would
her
also
delicate
gently
body
help her
trembled,
put on her
almost
clothes when she
crying
was
out
tired,
loud.
in order to let her
From
sleep a
DMO
little longer.
Xian's action of avoiding her,
He was simply
Feng
the
Ling
country's
had already
best
guessed
husband,
his choice.
right?
It
She
was until the
is
last
not my
straps were tied up
fiancé.
that Yi Luo regained her
DMO
senses in a
Xian's voice
daze.
was calm. His expression
flustered
injured and
and
shy gaze met DMO
His words were like
Xian's
needles
eyes
stabbing
and her
into
cheeks
wind
blushed
chimes'
again.
eardrums.
It's almost
Her
time.
head was
If you're not
throbbing,
ready,
and she
you'll
could
miss
clearly
today's
hear
good
something
opportunity
breaking in her
and have to
chest.
wait until
Brother
tomorrow
Supreme
night.
Mo.
DMO
Feng
Xian
Ling
miserably
stopped
called
teasing
out.
her.
DMO
His slender
Xian's
fingers
name
pinched
her blushed cheeks.
She could
Go
not
wash
believe
up.
that even if she brought out her
Right.
grandmother,
The second
man
bell
she
rang in
loved
the
still
afternoon.
mercilessly
It was the
exposed
best
her.
time to extract the heart
Through the
bone
corner
and
of her
heart blood.
eyes, Feng Ling glanced
She wanted
at the
to
girl
repair
who
the
was
broken
standing on the
glower
other
flame
side
fan
and
looking at her
combine her
provocatively.
heartbone with the glower flame
His
fan.
cheeks felt like they were on
Thinking
fire.
of the glower flame fan,
A sense
the
of
flush on
humiliation
Yi
arose
Luo's face
spontaneously.
gradually faded.
The person her brother
After
D
washing
respected
out,
the most
the
was
two
her
of them
grandmother.
hurried
to meet up with Tang Beiyuan.
But now,
When Yi
for the sake
Luo
of one
arrived
woman
at the
and another
destination,
woman,
she was
her
stunned.
big brother D was even willing
This
to
was the tunnel where
disregard
he
his own
phoned met Yi
grandmother.
Qian and Yi
What was
Ling
so
when
good
he was
about Yi
kidnapped.
Luo?
Because of
What
the
was good
conflict
about
with
Yi
Wolf
Luo?
Saint Law in this tunnel.
Why did her brother
The
D treat
entire
her in this
broken
way
temple
because
and
the tunnel had
Luo?
become a pile of ruins?
The more Feng Ling thought
Because
about
of this,
the more
there were very
unbalanced
few
she
people
felt.
here.
His
Generally,
hatred towards
one
Yi
might not even
Luo
see a person
intensified.
pass by this place for 10
Suddenly,
days to half a
a
month.
quiet and low voice sounded
Choosing
in his
this place
ears.
to extract the heart bone
His
was
voice
the
was
safest.
so soft that only the two
In the
of them
ruins
could
of the
hear
tunnel,
him.
an empty space
Little
of about
Ling,
2 meters
don't waste
wide
all
had
the
been cleared.
kindness that your grandmother had
There were
painstakingly
arrays placed
accumulated
around.
for you.
At
You
first
know
glance,
very well that
there
this
was a
Lord's
sense of
patience
déjà
is not
vu,
good,
as if preparing to
She
exorcise the
is my
spirits.
reverse scale.
Under the night
Just
sky,
3 simple
Tang
sentences,
Beiyuan's
but it
aqua-colored
seemed
dress
as if there were
seemed to be
turbulent
plated with
waves
a
surging
layer
in
of
silver
silver
Ling's
light.
heart.
She gazed
He
at the bright moon in the sky,
was warning her
gaze focused and
He
emotionless.
wanted to tell her.
No one knew what she was thinking. His entire
Chapter
person
1270.
inexplicably showed a sense of loneliness.
This knowledge made Feng Ling's body
She had an
sway
extremely
slightly.
simple and exquisite
Her
hairstyle.
entire body was weak and she
She
almost
had bright
fell onto the
eyes
ground.
and white teeth. A bone-piercing
Her
chill
eyebrows were like
extended
the
from her
moon,
feet to
and
her
her heart.
eyes were like the stars.
Her entire body
She
seemed
was
to
like
be
a
wrapped
goddess
in
under the
ice,
moonlight, exuding
just
an
because she
extremely
had
gentle
tarnished
charm.
Yi Luo's reputation.
Tang Beiyuan seemed to have heard the
So,
footsteps and withdrew her
DMO
gaze.
Xian also wanted
Her
to
lips
tarnish her
curled into a
reputation.
faint smile as she looked
because
at the
he was
newcomer.
worried that Yi Luo would
Zun,
misunderstand.
Madam.
So,
DMO
Yi
Xian
Luo's
avoided
face
her
turned
from getting
slightly
close to
red.
him. It's better to call
Just
me
to please Yi
Luo. We
Luo.
haven't even taken a step yet.
So,
it's still too early to call
DMO
me
Xian
mistress.
could ignore her grandmother's
He
kindness.
tightened his grip on her waist.
DMO
He
Xian Xian leaned close to her ear and said with a smile that didn't look like a smile. The pain of her heart tearing made her wish that she was dead. Nothing has been set in stone yet. Miss Feng, Senior Master never thought of an elder of the headquarters. Yi Qing Luo blushed and patted the hand on her waist. Who sent you to purposely defame Senior Master Mo? That's not what I mean. A clear voice sounded from the side. Still, you want to get married to me? Luo smiled lightly as she gazed at Feng, raised his brows as he leaned his face in front of her. You're purely admiring Master Mo, so you're delusional that you're his fiancé? He was simply
So you
perverse to the
intentionally
extreme.
instigated the students, attempting to force Master Mo
tricked her
to
into
accept
saying
your disrespectful delusions for your sake.
No matter if it's early or not,
you're the
Luo's
mistress
words
that
that
the
instantly
Overlord
made
has
those students
acknowledged,
who were
so you're the
originally
Imperial
infuriated by
Palace's
Feng Ling
mistress.
burst out laughing.
Tang Beiyuan
Pairs of
smiled
disdainful
brightly
and
as a sliver
disdainful
of
eyes
envy
flashed
flashed past
Feng
her
Ling.
eyes.
Looking at Feng Ling was like looking at a
Luo
nauseating
recalled
love-struck
Tang
fool.
Beiyuan standing under the
Feng
moonlight,
Ling had grown
that
up in the
lonely
Imperial
expression.
Palace since young.
Tang Beiyuan had
Because
a
of her
fiancé,
grandmother,
and it was
she
the
had
kind of
always been the
fiancé
center of
that she
attention
loved
since
deeply.
young, as everyone
Why would
revolved
she
around
show
her.
such an expression?
Since when had she suffered such humiliation? Her face turned pale as tears
Chapter
uncontrollably flowed
1279.
out. Her
Gong,
teary
the
eyes
first
stared
bell
fiercely
rang.
at Yiqing Luo. It broke the silence.
She turned around and covered
Tang
her face
Beiyuan
as she
grabbed
sobbed
Yiqing
softly
Luo's
and
arm
walked
and
far
brought her
away.
to the center of the array.
A few
Hurry up.
female students
After the
chased
glower
after
flame
her as
fan
they
is
scolded and
restored,
swore
I
that the
still
next
need to
time
rush
they saw
back to the
Feng Ling,
palace, they would definitely catch her and give her a good
followed
beating.
closely behind.
As for the other male
After the
students,
two of them
when they
entered
saw
the array,
Feng Ling's
Tang
pitiful
Beiyuan
crying look
looked
as
to
she
the
left,
side.
they couldn't bear to chase
It might be a
after
little
her.
painful to extract
For
your
a
heartbone.
moment, all the students were discussing about what happened earlier.
Your body will take a long time to
Yiqing
recover.
Luo guessed. You won't be as weak as
Probably
you are
in less
now.
than a joss stick's time.
Yiqing
The
Luo
entire
nodded.
West Lawn
She had
Public
already
Square
guessed
would
this
probably
point.
know about a lady named
The
Feng
Overlord
Ling,
will personally
shamelessly
extract the
deceiving
heartbone
everyone.
and blood
Delusional that she
Don't
was
worry
Master
about
Mo
failure.
Xian's
The
fiancé.
Overlord will not bear to let you suffer too
Yiqing
much.
Luo's brows rose as she
You just
shot a
need to
glance
remember,
at D.
after
Mo
extracting
Xian
the
and snorted
heartbone,
lightly.
you must not leave the Overlord's
Without looking
side.
back,
He walked into
Tang
the
Beiyuan's
dormitory and
voice
returned
turned
to his
solemn.
room.
A pair
Although
of
she
beautiful
appeared to be
eyes
so
gazed at
arrogant on the
Yiqing Luo
surface,
solemnly.
a high
In
and mighty
actual
person
fact,
is not allowed to have any
Xian's
weakness,
actions of
and you
avoiding
are
Feng
the
Ling's
Overlord's
touch and
weakness.
publicly denying Feng Ling's
I don't
lies
wish for
had
any
completely
accidents
pleased
to
her.
happen to the Overlord because
Now,
of you. Wenqim had become a
Beiyuan,
joke in West Billow Square.
Mo Xian's handsome
Yiqing
brows
Luo
creased
expressed
slightly.
that her mood
His
had
eyes
already
sunk
bloomed.
as he swept a cold glance
Although
at
it
Tang
wasn't
Beiyuan.
clear what was the relationship
Ah,
between Mo Xian and the Imperial
Yiqing Luo
Palace's
hurriedly
grandma.
pressed Mo Xian's hand.
It was
Tang is
unclear
right.
what kind of
I will
feelings
take
were
note.
involved between Mo
Tang
Xian
Beiyuan
and Grandma
said this to
Earth
her
Palace.
because she had identified Yiqing
But the only
Luo
thing
as
the
the
mistress
Yiqing
of the
Luo could
Imperial
confirm
Palace
was that Mo Xian
and
truly
also
respected
because she
the
was
Imperial
sincerely worried
Palace's
about
granny.
Mo Xian's safety.
Otherwise,
Feng
her
Ling would
current
not have
ability
used her
was indeed
grandmother
not
to
enough
threaten
to make the
Mo
people in the
Xian
Imperial
time and time
Palace
again.
feel assured.
For her,
Nirvana
Mo
Xian
Xian
rejected Feng
Xian
Ling
as a god, but there were
She was
thousands
already
of people
very
who wanted to pull
satisfied.
him down from the altar.
Yiqing Luo quickly
She was
returned to her
Mo
room,
Xian's
waiting for
weakness,
Mo Xian to
which
sneak
meant
into her
those
room
who
to
wanted
look
to
for
pull
her.
Mo Xian down from the
Mo
altar,
Xian
as long as they
indeed
laid their
intended to
hands
chase
on
after
her.
them.
Mo Xian
But
would
before he could
definitely
even
be
lift his
controlled.
leg, those students
This
who
was
chased
also the
after
reason
Feng
why
Ling
had
had already
hated
turned
her
back
so
and
much from the
surrounded
start.
him.
The
She could
students
not
apologized
become
for
Mo
listening to
Xian's
Feng
burden.
Ling's words earlier.
She could
and
not drag
reprimanding
Master Mo
Xian
Xian
down.
Deeply
Yiqing
afraid that
Luo's
Master
charming
Mo
eyes
Xian
sparkled
would
with a
blame them.
resolute glow.
Pulling and pulling,
She looked at
they
Tang
refused to let
Beiyuan and
Mo
confidently
Xian
smiled,
leave no matter
word
what.
by word, as though she
With
was making an
Mo
oath.
Xian's
Don't
current
worry,
status,
whatever
it
you are
wasn't
worried
convenient
about,
for him to
I will
fly
try
into
my
a
best
rage
not
and
to
chase
let it
these
happen.
students away.
It was the same as what Tang
surged in
Beiyuan
one
had
by
said
one.
when they first
Black
met,
heads swayed
when
in
she
front
thought
of his
that Tang
eyes.
Beiyuan was the second Feng
Mo
Ling.
Xian could only
He
look on
returned it to
helplessly
her
as
untouched.
Yiqing Luo's figure slowly
The two of them
disappeared.
looked at each other and smiled.
Mo Xian expressed.
The second bell rang. The three of them did not waste any more time. According to Mo Xian's request, Yiqing Luo sat cross-legged. He began to extract the heartbone and blood. 3 Spring City, the World Mercenary Group's old residence. After several hours of treatment, the wounds on the youths' bodies were finally bandaged. However, if they wanted to fully recover, they would probably have to lie in bed for half a month. Half a month was neither a long time nor a short time. But to these youths, if he didn't train for a day, it was very likely that others would catch up. Not to mention half a month's time. Hearing this news, although the youths were clamoring about finally being able to rest, their hearts were heavy. He had long since gotten used to the torture of training every day. If they stopped cultivating for half a month, how long would it take for them to return to their original level? The youngsters silently cursed the dark forces from the start to the end. After treating the last youngster's wound, Ghost Doctor washed his hands and walked out with a sunken face. Chapter 1280. Ha! The Ghost Doctor sneered. Holy Pirate's smile did not diminish. Old Doctor, to thank you for your hard work, I will personally send you back to the academy today. F***CK off. Ghost Doctor's mouth twitched a few times. He did not look happy at Holy Pirate's gesture of goodwill. Holy Pirate was still smiling as he followed behind him. So many years had passed. The ghost doctor was still the same as before, stubborn on the outside, but soft on the inside. Long Yunjian, Xiao Jin, and the rest comforted the injured youths one by one, letting them rest well. The two of them came out of the room and walked down the quiet corridor. The entire journey was silent. After a while, Long Yunjian's cold voice broke the silence. Are you serious about Xiao Yi? Long Yunjian was not a sensitive person. He was completely unaware of the relationship between Xiao Jin and Yan Xiao Yi. If he hadn't seen that scene with his own eyes today, he reckoned that Xiao Jin and Yan Xiao Yi were merely companions. Xiao Jin's footsteps paused. That delicate and pretty face appeared in his mind. His eyes softened as he replied softly, yes. That's a straightforward answer. Long Yunjian gave him a sidelong glance. What's Xiao Yi's attitude? Xiao Jin recalled the past few times when he forcefully kissed Yan Xiao Yi, only to be slapped by her. His heart sank. I don't know. You still haven't told her? Long Yunjian frowned. They were already so intimate, but they still hadn't admitted their relationship. Xiao Jin lowered his eyes, speechless. I understand how you feel. Long Yunjian looked at him deeply, and a helpless smile flashed across his azure blue eyes. I want to say it, but I can't. Facing the woman he loved, he would be nervous. He was so nervous that his mind went blank, and he was unable to accurately express the feelings in his heart. Furthermore, if he told her, they might not even be friends anymore. In order to stay by her side as a friend, Xiao Jin did not dare to say it. But he couldn't say it. But, you and I are different. Long Yunjian patted his shoulder lightly. If you really like her, then tell her your feelings as soon as possible. Otherwise, it will be too late. Xiao Jin nodded silently, countless thoughts surging in his mind. The two of them fell into silence again. When they reached the end of the corridor, the two were about to part ways. Suddenly, a flame flashed before his eyes. The sky was filled with flames, covering the sky and covering the earth as they swept over. One by one, the burning torches fell from the sky. In an instant, all the flammable items in the mansion were set ablaze. The expressions of the two immediately changed. I will go and take a look at the situation. You, Zhao Bo, and the rest, quickly bring the brothers away. Long Yunjian hurriedly instructed before immediately flying in the direction where the fire had come from. Chapter 1281. People from the Dark Forces. How could the people of the Dark Forces know that we are in the old house? Xiao Jin's expression instantly changed greatly. On the night before the competition, before the effects of the drug had worn off, they had split up into dozens of carriages and returned to the old house while hiding in the crowd. Even the spies of the 3,000 Peach Blossom mercenary group were unable to obtain this information. How could the people from the underworld know about this? Furthermore, hadn't I Ching Luo mentioned that under the Imperial Palace's coercion, the Dark Forces totally couldn't spare any energy to deal with them? These questions, Xiao Jin already did not have time to think in detail. He quickly took out a few coin darts from his sleeves and placed them in front of his brothers to protect them. All of you, leave quickly. None of you can escape. A sharp and proud voice came from the side of the black-robed man. The black-robed man stepped aside, and a graceful woman with a cold and arrogant smile walked over. The woman was also dressed in a black robe. Unlike the others, she did not use the cloak to cover her entire body. Instead, she revealed her face. Xiao Jin's pupils suddenly contracted. Yi Qing Qian. It's actually you. Wasn't this person the slut Yi Qing Qian who had become the laughingstock of Three Springs City some time ago? Ever since that day when she was humiliated by Yi Qing Luo, Yi Qing Qian seemed to have evaporated into thin air. Unexpectedly, she actually joined the underground forces. And they even joined forces with the dark forces to attack them? Call me Protector Hu, one of the protectors of the dark forces. Yi Qing Jian sneered as she looked at Xiao Jin, Her smile was gloomy. Student Xiao, N. I didn't remember your name wrongly, right? Xiao Jin was startled and his brows knitted tightly together. I didn't expect. The members of the newly rising world mercenary group are actually the students of the Heavenly Academy, the so-called waste class. If the Academy finds out about this, will they regret placing you in the devil class? Yi Qingqian raised her brows as she gave a teasing smile. I heard that you've won the championship in the interclass competition. As an old classmate, I should congratulate you. Her words, her voice, were exceptionally harsh. Xiao Jin's face sank, his entire body tensed as he forcefully endured his rage and didn't act rashly. There were about 200 people on the other side. All of them were profound practitioners from the dark forces. He possessed the forbidden skills and secret techniques of the dark forces. On their side, there were only about 20 of them who could fight. Furthermore, he had to take care of the other 50 or so companions who were injured and unable to move. In particular, the fire in the old house had spread to the backyard. If they really fought, they would never be able to gain the upper hand. I wonder how Ajan is doing. Yo, isn't this the other students from the devil class? Why are all of you bandaged like this? Yi Qingqian didn't care whether those people responded to her or not as she covered her mouth and pointed at the youngsters behind Xiao Jin in shock. A pair of evil and cold eyes curved as he smiled. Oh, look at my memory. I forgot that the day before your match, the dark forces happened to pass by the mountain behind your square. We happened to attack them and gave them some pointers. Xiao Jin's tensed body suddenly trembled. His ordinary-looking face immediately revealed a thick anger. Yi Qingqian looked at his reaction and smiled satisfactorily. I'm rather impressed with you guys, to have received our pointers and still have the ability to compete on the second day. That day, she knew very well how ruthless the Dark Coalition was. They were just short of killing these people on the spot. Not killing them was just to make Yi Qing Luo lose all her face. To make the devil class which Yi Qing Luo led to become cowards who didn't dare to take part in the competition and automatically withdrew from the competition. Chapter 1282. But not only did Yi Qing Luo not follow the plan, because all the devil class students were heavily injured and unable to take part in the competition. Instead she led these devil class students who didn't seem to be injured had won this year's competition's champion. As Yi Qingqian thought about it, her eyes gradually shrouded with a layer of viciousness. The person who attacked us at the back of the mountain, is you. A chilly voice was heard from behind Yi Qingqian. She saw a blue-robed Long Yunzhan holding a blue long sword as he charged towards Yi Qingqian's direction. His eyes were cold as he had no emotions on his face. The long sword in his hand flashed a cold blue ray and in the midst of the flames, it drew out a blue light after image. Boom boom boom, the sword ray was valiant as it struck the crowd of dark forces. Instantly, a huge deep pit exploded on the ground. However, that sinister smile on Yi Qingqian's lips had already swiftly pulled a distance away the moment Long Yunzhan appeared. A huge explosion was heard as the entire old mansion shook non-stop. That blazing flame had also burnt down everything in the courtyard. Earth Profound 8th grade? Devil class monitor is indeed not to be belittled. Yi Qingqian's brows rose as she looked at the domineering man standing in front of Xiao Jin and the rest in ridicule. Earth Profound 8th grade? Zhao Bo and the rest looked at Long Yunzhan in shock. Other than Xiao Jin and the rest, the other students probably didn't know Long Yunzhan's true profound grade. They only knew that Long Yunzhan was very powerful. But they had not expected that. Long Yunzhan was already an Earth Profound 8th grade advanced cultivator. But while they were shocked, Yi Qingqian didn't show any signs of fear. What's more, there wasn't even a hint of flustered expression. As though an Earth Profound 8th grade cultivator, in her eyes, was just an ant. Zhao Bo and the rest's hearts sunk as they looked at Yi Qingqian warily. They were secretly speculating on what profound grade Yi Qingqian who had cooperated with the Dark Forces and even got a protector title in the Dark Forces. Long Yunjian stood expressionlessly in front of everyone as he slowly raised his long sword and pointed it towards Yi Qingqian. His icy cold voice seemed to be wrapped in frost. Those who hurt the world group must be killed. His words had just ended and his figure turned into a flowing light as he charged towards those 200 over people. At the same time, Long Yunjian's voice came from the world group badge. There's a secret passage in my room. Bring the other brothers and leave immediately. Pung! The light sword flashed. The blue light whistled and the sword radiance surged. The entire courtyard was instantly stirred up by the terrifying profound qi, causing the ground to be filled with rubble and dust. Boom! There was another loud explosion. The long sword sank into the ground. From the moment the blue longsword plunged into the ground, a thin line that looked like a spider's web split open densely. The ground shook, and the surrounding trees and gravel were all cut down by the sword radiance. Yi Qingqian was originally complacent as she was filled with disdain towards Long Yunjian. One after another, the sword gleams came down and Yi Qingqian's expression instantly turned steely green. Go! Charge! Kill everyone in the light devil class, don't leave a single one alive. Yi Qingqian's voice was sharp as she hurriedly commanded. Smoke and dust filled the air, and they couldn't see anything around them. Due to Long Yunjian's terrifying aura, the ground shook and the mountain swayed, making it hard to even stand. Momentarily, those people from the dark forces turned into a chaotic mess. Whereas on the other side, Zhao Bo swiftly called out to the remaining brothers as they carried the injured students one by one, sending them to Long Yunjian's room. Don't even think of escaping. Yi Qingqian realized Long Yunjian's motive as a burst of profound yin qi rose from her palm. Chapter 1283. The profound yin qi, in just a moment, swallowed all the sword radiance which Long Yunjian had released. Yi Qingqian's arms opened up and with an elegant posture, she landed steadily among the black-robed men. Her eyes were filled with an eerie chill as she gave a cold harumph. The world group's leader, an earth-profound 8th grade cultivator, are you really willing to submit to a slut skirt? Long Yunjian didn't say a word. He had no intention to converse with Yi Qingqian. The next sword radiance was released once again. The blue long sword and the sword qi's oppressive grandeur once again enveloped the entire area. The horrifying sword radiance exploded with a huge amount of profound energy. Yi Qingqian swiftly retaliated. Xiao Jin looked at those 200 over people, taking the opportunity to stop Zhao Bo and the rest from assassinating the injured youngsters as the gold coin darts in his hands flew out and joined the battle. Momentarily, the entire old mansion was in turmoil. But, after all, there was a huge disparity in their abilities, and with the disadvantage in numbers, they still had to protect the other students. In just half an incense's time, Long Yunjian and the rest were forced to retreat to the direction of the bedroom in the backyard. Be careful. Guard the bedroom. Xiao Jin was at the front line, entangling with 10 over dark forces. From the corner of his eyes, he saw 10 over people from the dark forces, quietly getting close to those bedroom. His expression sunk as he shouted out sharply. In the bedroom, there were still many brothers who had not been moved in time. Most of the brothers had fallen into a deep sleep under Ghost Doctor's treatment. If the dark forces were to get close, they wouldn't be able to resist at all. But, at this moment, even Zhao Bo and the rest had been restrained by the other dark forces. There was no one who could stop the people who had snuck into the bedroom. The leader of the black-robed men walked into the bedroom and saw a young man who was lying on the bed with his eyes closed resting. The smile on his face was filled with excitement and viciousness. As long as they slaughtered the world group, this bunch of brats, and took their heads, they would have the chance to become the high and mighty guardians. The black-robed man laughed sinisterly as he raised the weapon in his hand, chopping down towards the neck of the sleeping young man. Ah! A miserable shriek was heard. The weapon in that black-robed man's hand was kicked away, shooting out a silver ray in midair. Ah! Another scream rang out. The weapon fell from the sky and happened to stab the stomach of the black-robed man. The other black-robed men took a closer look. An old man in a white robe was standing in front of the young man's bed. The old man's face was gloomy and he looked extremely impatient. The dark forces are getting bolder and bolder. The old man narrowed his eyes as he looked at the black-robed men in front of him. The black-robed men looked at each other. They clearly felt that this old man was not someone easy to deal with. Immediately, he turned around and tried to escape. As he turned around, the eyes of the black-robed men were blinded by a flash of golden light. After getting used to the golden light, Zhang Xian saw an old man dressed in a golden robe, looking like a nouveau riche, standing at the entrance of the room. "Old doctor, I'm done on my side. Why haven't you started?" Holy Pirate rushed into the room. Without a word, he grabbed a man in a black robe and punched him in the stomach. With a casual toss, he grabbed the second person. In just a moment, the few black-robed men lost all signs of life. Ghost Doctor looked back at the young man who was still in deep sleep and frowned impatiently. The dark forces are actually so rampant to such an extent. Looks like this matter needs to be reported to the higher-ups as soon as possible. Chapter 1284. God Thief and Ghost Doctor walked out of the room and sensed a burst of strong profound energy fluctuation. Their expressions congealed as they speedily moved towards the direction of the fluctuation. Long Yunzhan and Xiao Jin were already covered with injuries as they retreated step by step. Whereas in front of the two of them were rows after rows of men dressed in brown warrior robes. Their dressing was extremely simple and the most eye-catching thing was on their arms, embroidered with an extremely conspicuous emperor word. That was Imperial Palace's disciples. Imperial Palace's disciples, any one of them had a pivotal position in the pugilistic world. Any random one of them would be a mystic profound grade 5 and above. Whereas this group of around 30 over Imperial Palace's disciples, the lowest profound grade was mystic profound grade 9 while the highest had already reached earth profound grade 6. Overlord, that fellow seems to be interested in that last Qing Luo. Holy Thief clicked his tongue. His heart that was hanging in the air finally calmed down. These Imperial Palace's disciples must be selected from the Imperial Palace's upper-class disciples. Sending out 30 over upper-class disciples, just to protect these people whom Yi Qing Luo cared about. To Dmo Xian, if it wasn't because he really cared, if he wasn't really interested. Dmo Xian would absolutely not do such a thing. The Imperial Palace's disciples trained in an orderly manner. After helping Long Yunzhan and Xiao Jin to block those attacks, they speedily redistributed their own responsibilities. 20 people stayed behind to continue fighting against the dark forces. As for the remaining 10 over people, they pulled Long Yunzhan and Xiao Jin towards the direction of Zhao Bo and the others. Those 10 over people were extremely agile as they speedily got close to the bedroom and carried the young man who was in deep sleep on their shoulders as they left without turning their heads back. As for those dark forces who tried to sneak into the bedroom to lay their hands on those injured young men, they were immediately exterminated by them. Zhao Bo and the others stared at those Imperial Palace's disciples in a daze. He had mingled in the mercenary group for so many years and naturally understood the meaning of the emperor word on their sleeves. Imperial Palace, Nirvana Realm's first palace. They had not expected the Imperial Palace's disciples to appear here and help them. Zhao Bo felt that he had followed a good team at this moment. When their mercenary group's management grew up, their mercenary group would definitely become the #1 mercenary group in future. What are you still standing here for? Hurry up and carry the brothers away. Xiao Jin slapped the back of Zhao Bo's head and urged. Zhao Bo repeatedly responded and moved his brothers along with the Imperial Palace's disciples. Xiao Jin glanced in the direction of his brothers who were busy moving things back and forth, then immediately shifted his gaze to the battlefield. 20 over Imperial Palace's disciples, against 100 over people from the dark forces, Yi Qing Qian would occasionally harass them. It was indeed a little strenuous. If it wasn't for their perfect coordination, tacit understanding, and absolute strength, they would definitely be at a disadvantage. After dozens of rounds, both sides were in a deadlock. Xiao Jin gripped the coin dart tightly and was about to rush forward to help. However, a large palm pressed down on his shoulder, stopping him in his tracks. Xiao Jin glanced sideways and met with a pair of icy cold azure eyes. Bring Xiao Yi out first, no one has gone to her room yet. Long Yunzhan advised. Xiao Jin's footsteps paused. But, what about that side? The Overlord has specially sent people to protect us. We must not let anything happen to the disciples of the Imperial Palace, otherwise. How are they going to explain this to Dizun? What face did he have to face Yiqing Luo? Chapter 1285. Then you. Xiao Jin's brows were tightly knitted together. The wounds on Long Yunzhan's body were no less than his. In fact, her injuries were even more serious than his. Otherwise, the Imperial Palace's disciple wouldn't have forcefully dragged them away from the battlefield and indicated that they were only responsible for moving the brothers out of the old mansion. I'm fine. Long Yunzhan shook his head. I know what I'm doing. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and headed towards the battlefield with his blue sword in hand. Xiao Jin stared at Long Yunzhan, who was doing his best to kill in the dark forces. His fists gradually tightened. He pursed his lips and glanced in the direction of Yan Shaoyi's courtyard. The expression on his face didn't change, as if he was hesitating about something. After a long while, Xiao Jin finally took a deep breath, gripped the coin darts tightly, and walked towards the direction of the battlefield. Kid, you'd better be a good boy and move the injured children. Leave this place to me and the old doctor. Holy Pirate came from behind and pressed down on Xiao Jin's shoulder. Xiao Jin was stunned. He turned his head to look at the two people behind him. God Thief, Ghost Doctor, you guys, didn't they leave? Alright, stop talking nonsense. The Ghost Doctor frowned impatiently. He turned around and entered the battlefield. Holy Pirate patted Xiao Jin's shoulder and chased after Ghost Doctor. With the addition of Holy Thief and the Ghost Doctor, the situation of the battle instantly became balanced. Seeing that they had gained the upper hand in the battle, Yiqing Qian was flustered and exasperated as she commanded the black-robed men who were still alive to attack. Xiao Jin didn't continue to be entangled as he headed towards Yan Shaoyi's courtyard. This old mansion was bought by Yan Shaoyi, excluding the devil-class students and Zhao Bo and the rest. He, Yiqing Luo, Long Yunzhan and the others all had their own independent courtyards. Yan Shaoyi's courtyard was in the corner of the backyard. Xiao Jin quickly walked towards Yan Shaoyi's courtyard and the expression on his face instantly changed. Originally, he was feeling complicated and apprehensive. He was still thinking about how to face the awkwardness and ambiguity between the two of them not long ago when he saw Yan Shaoyi. At this moment, a strong feeling of unease and fear emerged. Shaoyi. Xiao Jin's voice was hoarse and trembling. He ignored the pain from the wounds on his body and quickly ran towards Yan Shaoyi's bedroom. The door to Yan Shaoyi's bedroom was wide open and there was a pool of blood on the floor. It was obvious that there was a lot of noise coming from inside. The people from the dark forces, they even sent people to search the independent courtyard. Shaoyi. His Shaoyi. Xiao Jin's eyes were bloodshot. His fingers were tightly gripping the leopard, cutting his skin, but he didn't care. And the scene after rushing into the bedroom. This caused the blood on Xiao Jin's face to instantly disappear. His mind went blank, as if something had exploded in his mind. There were 5 black-robed men standing in the bedroom. There were 2 people lying on the ground. Blood flowed from the 2 men's bodies. Xiang Shaoyi's bandages had long since fallen apart. She stood in the corner, holding a scythe that shone with blue light and looked like a crescent moon. Such a petite person was drenched in blood. Her hair, which looked like seaweed, was stuck to her face by her cold sweat. She gasped for air and leaned against the wall. Her body swayed and she could not stand steadily. But she still stubbornly refused to fall down. Shaoyi. Xiao Jin's voice was trembling as he called out Yan Shaoyi's name. That pair of bloodshot eyes was once again enveloped by the blood color on Yan Xiaoyi. The bewitching red color started to spread bit by bit. His heart was in extreme pain. Murderous intent shot out. Chapter 1286. The 5 black-robed men didn't even have time to react. They only felt a chill on their necks before they lost all consciousness. The power released by a person who was enraged was tens of thousands of times stronger than usual. Xiao Jin stared furiously at the corpses on the ground. He wished he could pull out their tendons and pull out their bones. Xiao Jin, when Yan Xiaoyi saw Xiao Jin's arrival, her tense nerves relaxed. The sickle in her hand fell. She stretched out her hand towards Xiao Jin. But she didn't have any strength in her body. Her vision turned black and her body fell down softly. Yan Xiaoyi thought that she had always been strong. In this world, the only person she could rely on was herself. Since she was born, the Yan family had treated her as a thorn in their side. Her things should belong to Yan Zhenfei. From a young age, she knew that no matter what the situation was, she could only survive by being strong. Just now when she was surrounded by 7 people, she didn't retreat. A few days ago, she was ambushed at the back mountain of the Shilan Square. Before she had recovered, she was hit again in the competition, adding injuries on top of injuries. The side effects of the spirit returning pill, it made her suffer 100 times more pain than before. Under such circumstances, she could still hold on to her will. What's more, she had experienced pain worse than this before. What was all of this? But, the moment she saw Xiao Jin appear, a certain place in her heart seemed to have been violently touched. His worried gaze, trembling and panicked tone made her feel at ease. In his mind, a strange feeling appeared for some reason. It was as if someone was saying to her, "He's here, I'm relieved." Her body and mind relaxed, causing her to lose all consciousness in the next moment. Xiao Yi. A terrified voice shouted Yan Xiaoyi's name loudly. Xiao Jin's body flashed and he held Yan Xiaoyi firmly in his arms. The blood on her body mixed with his. Her body covered in blood and wounds made Xiao Jin's heart feel like it was being pierced by needles. If he had listened to Long Yunzhan and rushed over earlier, Yan Xiaoyi wouldn't have suffered such heavy injuries. If he had really chosen to join the battle with Long Yunzhan, then Xiao Jin's heart was in even more pain. He didn't dare to think of that outcome. He didn't dare to think about the result that he would regret for the rest of his life. Right now, his Xiao Yi was in his embrace. That was enough. The resolute man's eyes reddened again. Shilan Square, tunnel. Yiqing Luo's face was pale as she leaned into Dmo Xian's arms. Her pair of charming eyes stared anxiously at Tang Beiyuan who was sitting by the side, in a state of selflessness as she restored the glower flame fan. The refining process was extremely complicated. Yiqing Luo the alchemist was confused by these complicated procedures. 4 hours had passed since the heart bone was dug out. The process of repairing the glowing flame fan continued. For some unknown reason, a sense of panic and uneasiness welled up in his heart. He had a feeling that something was about to happen. But she couldn't explain in detail what kind of feeling it was. What's the matter? Dmo Xian acutely sensed the uneasiness of the young lady in his arms as he inquired in a low voice. Yiqing Luo raised her eyes and fell into his peach blossom eyes which seemed to bear thousands of pampering. The uneasiness in his heart was diluted by this gentleness. She smiled and shook her head. After repairing it for so long, I am a little worried that there might be other problems with the glowing flame fan. Chapter 1287. Yiqing Luo's lips curled upwards as she buried her face into his chest. I'll wait patiently. How does your body feel? It's been 4 hours, it shouldn't be as painful as before, right? Dmo Xian's slender fingers caressed the back of her head. Extracting the heart bone and blood was extremely harmful to the human body. Even if Dmo Xian had used up almost 20% of his profound energy to alleviate Yiqing Luo's pain. It could only alleviate a little bit of her pain. After all, it was extracting the blood from the heart and the bones from the body. When extracting the heart bone, Yiqing Luo's face turned pale from the pain. But she had been biting her lower lip and didn't make any sound of pain. Dmo Xian's heart ached so much that he couldn't wait to bear it for her. But, for Yiqing Luo's future, for her to become stronger. This bit of pain, she must bear it. My body is all right. Yiqing Luo responded softly. After a moment of silence, she finally opened her mouth to ask, how long does this kind of pain and discomfort usually last? Her words had just ended when her shoulders were pressed by his large palms. The man's anxious voice floated into her ears. Where do you feel uncomfortable now? Is it still very painful here? His large palm pressed down on her breasts. Yiqing Luo was stunned as she raised her eyes to look at Dmo Xian. Before she could answer, Dmo Xian had already anxiously held her hand and felt her pulse. After extracting the heart bone, it will at most hurt for 1 hour. Do you still feel pain now? Where does it hurt? Don't tell me I'm wrong to extract the heart bone for you. A series of questions, as though he was muttering to himself, came out from his mouth. Looking at Dmo Xian's eyes filled with worry and guilt, Yiqing Luo couldn't say the words that were at the tip of her tongue. After a long time, she curled her pink lips and slowly shook her head. No, I'm just asking casually, to see if there's any difference between me and those who have extracted their heart bone. Dmo Xian's hand which was holding her wrist loosened as though a heavy burden had been lifted. His fingers, once again stroked her hair. If you feel uncomfortable anywhere, you must tell me, do you hear me? It was as if he was admonishing a child, extremely doting and extremely gentle. Yiqing Luo's head which was buried in his chest nodded as her eyelids drooped down, concealing the complicated emotions in her eyes. She raised her fair little hand and placed it on her chest without anyone noticing. After extracting her heart bone and heart blood, she had always felt a dull pain, as if she was being pricked by needles. Up until now, 4 hours had passed. Although she didn't feel as much pain as before, there was still a very strange feeling. Was it an illusion? All right. Mission accomplished. A joyful voice came from the side. Tang Beiyuan wiped the sweat off her forehead and smiled in relief. At least I didn't let you down. The devouring flame fan has been repaired. Yiqing Luo's attention was immediately attracted by the glower flame fan. Yiqing Luo's fingers had just touched the glower flame fan when she suddenly froze. The moment the glowing flame fan touched her fingertips, there seemed to be a kind of, the feeling of his soul being shaken. It was as if the glowing flame fan had already fused with her soul. She could clearly sense that the glowing flame fan was transmitting some kind of excitement to her. This was the glowing flame fan which was restored using the heart's blood and heart bone. The glowing flame fan in her palm, the touch and weight was no different from the past. But it was obviously more exquisite. Chapter 1288. For example, there was a dagger hidden in the handle of the fan. Moreover, on every support of the glowing flame fan, there were all kinds of hidden weapons. He had also obtained 10 wintry silver threads. Compared to before, its lethality was much greater, and it was much more convenient to use. Mistress, where did you learn how to design weapons? Too powerful. Can I ask you to help me draw weapons in the future? Tang Beiyuan's eyes sparkled as she looked hopefully at Yiqing Luo. Although it took a lot of effort to repair the glowing flame fan, it was still not enough. But to be able to restore the glower flame fan, and according to Yiqing Luo's request, adding so many bold hidden weapons. He was filled with pride. As a blacksmith, she was well versed in the design of weapons. Yiqing Luo's request. When the glower flame fan was completed, she was shocked. It's my honor to be able to serve the #1 armament master. Yiqing Luo's eyes curved into crescents as she tried out the glower flame fan in her hands. Tang Beiyuan cheered in excitement. At this moment, she finally looked like a 17 or 18-year-old girl. We've gotten the weapons, let's hurry back to the old mansion, everyone is still waiting for us there. Yiqing Luo kept the glower flame fan and looked up at Dmo Xian. Under the bright candlelight, Yiqing Luo's pale face was reflected. Dmo Xian frowned. Let's rest for the night and continue our journey tomorrow. You've just extracted your heart bone. Even if you want to recover quickly, you'll need to rest for 5 or 6 days. I'm fine. Yiqing Luo's lips curled upwards as her little hand grabbed his lapel as she laughed lightly. Aren't you still by my side? Those children have taken the soul-restoring pill, so they must be in extreme pain right now. At least at this time, I want to be by their side. When she mentioned those brothers in the world group, Yiqing Luo's expression became extremely gentle. There was a hint of gentleness in her eyes. Don't they always say that I'm their hope? I think they wouldn't feel so bad if I were there. If it wasn't for the glowing flame fan, she would have rushed back to the old mansion after the competition to check on the injuries of the youths. Now that the gourd flame fan had been repaired, she was not willing to stay in the West Lawn Plaza for even a moment longer. You. Dmo Xian sighed softly as he shook his head helplessly. This was also why he was more and more attracted to Lil Luo. He seemed cold and heartless, and his methods were ruthless. At such a young age, he wouldn't even bat an eyelid when killing someone. But she cherished the people she cared about and the people she wanted to protect with all her heart. All right, I'll accompany you back. Dmo Xian placed his palm on Yiqing Luo's head. Lord Overlord. Tang Beiyuan's expression congealed as she hurriedly called out to Dmo Xian. The remaining words were at the tip of his tongue. But she was stopped by Dmo Xian's stern gaze. Yiqing Luo acutely sensed something as her vision turned towards Tang Beiyuan and looked at Dmo Xian. Is there an urgent matter over at the Imperial Palace which requires you to settle? Tang Beiyuan opened her mouth, but in the end, she closed it and looked away. Yiqing Luo suddenly understood. Ah Xian, it's only half a day's journey from here to the old mansion. With Ah Feng accompanying me back, it'll be fine. The Imperial Palace is not a big deal. With you and Li Xian guarding it for me, I can rest assured. Dmo Xian hugged Yiqing Luo's waist as he glanced sideways at Tang Beiyuan. Beiyuan, Xiaoling is here too, bring her back. Tang Beiyuan's footsteps halted as she nodded slightly. Yes, Overlord. Chapter 1289. Dmo Xian's eyelids drooped down as his peach blossom eyes reflected her face. His lips curled upwards and everything in the world seemed to have lost its color. Yiqing Luo's breathing stopped as her heartbeat sped up. He leaned over and pressed his lips against her ear. His deep magnetic voice lingered beside her ear. No matter how important the Imperial Palace's matters are, it's not as important as you. Just a few simple words, but it seemed to be something that touched Yiqing Luo's heart fiercely. Her cheeks were flushed red. The arms around his neck also tightened at this moment. Her blushing face was plastered on his shoulder as she spoke in a low and extremely soft voice. Ah Xian, I like you. She wanted to tell this feeling to Dmo Xian. This man had always placed her in the most important position in his heart. To her, Dmo Xian was also the most important person to her. She liked Dmo Xian. Very much, very much. The man who was hugging her stiffened as though he was stunned by Yiqing Luo's sudden confession. That long eyelashes fluttered unnaturally. His fair skin was obviously tainted with a touch of redness. Yiqing Luo seemed to have discovered a new continent as her eyes widened as she started giggling. Ah Xian, are you shy? Yiqing Luo's eyes curved as she smiled. She didn't expect her confession to be able to see such an expression from Dmo Xian. As the head of a formidable hidden family in the 21st century. Every time she was teased by Dmo Xian until her face turned red, hovering between life and death. This was the first time she saw Dmo Xian's shy look. Decided, in the future when there's nothing to do, she would say some sweet nothings. At the very least, he had to return the favor to her for flirting with him. How could she be the only one who was shy? Shut up. Dmo Xian turned his face away as he forcefully pushed Yiqing Luo's head into his arms. His footsteps quickened. Yi Qing Luo refused to let him off. Xian, your ears are all red, you like me that much? Dmo Xian looked embarrassed. He pretended to glare fiercely at the girl in his arms, and the corners of his mouth twitched indifferently. Soon after, he bent down and fiercely kissed those pink lips that were still chattering away. Everything in the surroundings was quiet. Looking at Dmo Xian's departing back, Tang Beiyuan was unable to retract her gaze for a long time. Just now, Di Zun was really shy. She had never seen Di Zun like this. That expression, that childish behavior. There was not a trace of the arrogance that he had in the past. He was just an ordinary, pure, ordinary man. The overlord had truly fallen in love with Yi Qing Luo. It was only by Yi Qing Luo's side that the overlord seemed like a real person. A person of flesh and blood, a person of joy and sorrow. No matter how important the Arch Palace is, it's not as important as you. These words kept lingering in his mind. She could not help but laugh softly. However, deep in his eyes, there was a strong sense of loneliness. If this sentence, her fiancé was willing to say to her, how good would that be? Unfortunately, she was afraid that she would never be able to hear these words again in this lifetime. Yi Qing Luo and Dmo Xian were riding on Little Nine as they rushed back to the old mansion. Little Nine's speed was extremely fast and the distance was reduced by half. In less than 4 hours, the two of them had already reached Three Springs City. In order not to attract too much attention, the two of them changed to walking as it was not far from Three Springs City. At this moment, it was just daybreak. The roadside was already crowded with people and it was extremely lively. Have you heard? Yesterday there was a huge fire, which directly burnt that old mansion in the west completely. Chapter 1290. Right, it's that the World Mercenary Group's old mansion. Wasn't it the mercenary group which was surrounded by the Yuchi family previously? Mercenary group. They must have offended the enemy and last night the enemy specially came to seek revenge. That's called burning thoroughly. The surrounding houses are not affected at all, apparently they are targeting the World Mercenary Group. If it wasn't for the fact that we saw the fire when we were making night watch this morning, I'm afraid we wouldn't know about this matter till now. The surrounding commoners were talking about the gossip which had spread throughout the entire Three Springs City early in the morning. Yi Qing Luo originally wasn't interested in these gossips. But indistinctly, she heard everyone discussing about burning the World Group enemy. She then diverted her attention to listen. After she understood what the commoners were talking about, her face instantly turned pale like a piece of paper. Xian. Yi Qing Luo grabbed Dmo Xian's robe tightly. Dmo Xian's expression was grave as he held her little hand tightly. Let's go back and take a look first. The two of them increased their speed as they sped towards the direction of the old mansion. Before they even got close to the old mansion, Yi Qing Luo smelt a thick smell of smoke. There were several commoners surrounding them as they pointed and gossiped. Yi Qing Luo's expression turned paler by the minute. She let go of Dmo Xian's arm and her figure flashed as she speedily shifted to the entrance of the old mansion. There were several bailiffs from the surrounding as they carried out one corpse after another from the old mansion. Yi Qing Luo knocked into one of the bailiffs and the stretcher which she was carrying instantly slipped out of her hands. The corpse on the stretcher fell onto the ground. That corpse was already burnt as it gave off an extremely pungent smell. The bailiffs were sent here early in the morning to carry the corpse as he raised his head and started scolding. Who dares to disturb the official's work? Don't you want your life? When his gaze met Yi Qing Luo, the bailiff's expression changed. Three Springs Sect's young matriarch. Yi Qing Luo didn't bother about the bailiffs as she stared straight at that pitch-black corpse. How many people are dead? Young matriarch, my condolences. Don't worry, the officials will definitely find the murderer and take revenge for the World Mercenary Group. The bailiff stuttered. In the entire Three Springs City, there wasn't anyone who didn't know Yi Qing Luo. Yi Qing Luo was the World Group's vice group leader and this was something which everyone knew. Yiqing Luo's face turned gloomy as she raised her hand to grab the bailiff's collar. I'm asking you, how many people have died? The runner's legs went soft. Currently, the government has carried out more than 30 corpses. All of them have been burned beyond recognition and cannot be identified. There are more than 100 corpses in the backyard, the bailiff at the side continued. Young sect master, someone must be seeking revenge. There are obvious signs of a fight in the backyard. Please think carefully and see if you've made enemies with anyone recently. Yiqing Luo turned a deaf ear to their words. His head was buzzing, and he felt like he was about to explode. She stared at the pitch-black corpse on the ground, breathing heavily. Clenching her fists tightly, she quickly strode into the old house. Lil Luo, calm down. Dmo Xian stretched out his hand and grabbed Yiqing Luo's arm. Her little hands were cold and trembling. To be precise, Yiqing Luo's body was trembling non-stop. Even though she was nestled in Dmo Xian's arms, her body was still trembling. A peerless face was extremely pale. Her eyes were sparkling with a glint of crystal-clear tears, as she looked at Dmo Xian's face with a vacant look. Ah Xian. Yiqing Luo's breathing tightened. Accompany me. Accompany me in, I want to confirm. No one could recognize those youngsters' corpses. But she recognized them. The corpses which were lying on the ground were not from the world group. Over 100 corpses in the backyard. It might not be the world group's youngsters. Chapter 1291. Dmo Xian comforted her by kissing her forehead. Don't worry, they will be fine. The trembling young lady in his arms didn't say a word. The little hand that was holding onto his shirt curled up a little more. Dmo Xian's peach blossom eyes squinted slightly as he tightened his arms around her. He lowered his head and pressed his lips against her ear. The young lady's faint fragrance entered his nostrils. His eyes flickered slightly as he suppressed the emotions that he shouldn't be feeling at this moment. He said in a gentle voice, "You're a little pervert, and the people you've trained are naturally perverts as well. If they can't even avoid this little danger, how can they stand by your side and fight alongside you?" Yiqing Luo was stunned. The warm breath on her earlobe kept brushing against her skin. Her long curly lashes blinked, and when she looked at Dmo Xian again, there was finally some spirit in her eyes. Dmo Xian's slender fingers pinched her nose. Believe in them, believe in the companions who can stand side by side with you. His deep magnetic voice made Yiqing Luo's body softened. Her heart seemed to be wrapped and covered by a warm current. That's right, she should believe in the brothers whom she had her eyes on. She should believe in her own companions. They were no longer the youngsters who were labeled as trash in the past. They already had enough power to stand by her side, companions who could stand side by side with her. Believe in them. Just like how they believed in her, believe in them. Yiqing Luo's nervousness and panic, at this moment, vanished into thin air. Her lips curled into a smile as she nodded vigorously. Thank you, Ah Xian. Dmo Xian rubbed her head, held her little hand and pulled her directly to the old mansion which had long been destroyed by the fire. The crowd of commoners and the bailiffs who were watching the show behind them were stunned. That handsome man who looked like a god descended, could it be the legendary overlord? That otherworldly temperament. That flawless handsome face. That awe-inspiring majesty which made one inexplicably submit to him. He emitted a strong demeanor of a monarch. Other than the overlord, there was. Who? Such a man was so intimate with Yiqing Luo? Like a husband and wife, intimately hugging each other, whispering in a warm voice. So, the young lord of the Three Springs sect family really had such a relationship with the overlord. The common people talked about it enthusiastically, spreading the news from 1 to 10, 10 to 100. However, the two of them who had entered the old mansion were unaware of this matter. Not a single part of the old house was left unscathed. The air was also filled with a pungent smell that made one's stomach churn. From time to time, the blackened wood could no longer support its weight and fell to the ground, emitting an ear-piercing sound. Yiqing Luo walked quickly towards the backyard. As soon as he arrived at the backyard, he saw the burnt corpses all over the place. It was clear that a great battle had just taken place. Sensing carefully, he could still vaguely sense a faint trace of profound energy remaining in the air. Yiqing Luo looked around for a while and slowly closed her eyes. A burning sensation gradually welled up in his chest. This was the strength of her profound jade heart. She could sense the profound rank of a profound practitioner that was higher than hers. He could distinguish the grade of other profound practitioners' profound heart jades. Previously, after her profound jade heart was dug out by Yi Qingling and the people from the dark forces, she was still able to rely on the remnant energy of the profound jade heart stored in her heart to sense it. Now that the profound jade heart had returned to her body, this ability of hers was getting stronger and stronger. Probing for a moment, she indeed sensed the remnant profound energy in the surroundings. It's the dark forces? Yiqing Luo's brows creased, vaguely sensing the profound yin qi which came from the dark forces. This aura was not obvious. You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.